Hey guys, welcome back. Today we are talking about Beyblade X avatars and sort of my thoughts on them, whether or not I want them to return, whether or not they have returned, and sort of speculation on potentially them coming back in the near future. So, avatars are something that have been around Beyblade for a long time. They haven't always been called avatars. That's really a burst term. The original term was Bit Beast, which functionally are very different from avatars. Bit Beasts were like tangible entities that would fight alongside the Beybladers in Plastic Gen. They weren't trapped in the Beyblade, they weren't caught like a Pokemon or anything. They just were attracted to the Blader because of their Blader spirit and would fight alongside them. In fact, there were many episodes, or more than one episode, I should say, where Bit Beasts left or were lost or were captured by enemy teams or whatever. So they're not stuck in the Beyblade. They can leave at any time. The Beyblade is basically the vehicle which the Bit Beast decides to reside in, but they can leave at any point. Whereas in later series, they're really functionally stuck together. For the most part, you sort of see a separation of the spirit or whatever in Metal Fight when between Storm Pegasus and Galaxy Pegasus. The lore is not super concise in explaining how that sort of worked in Metal Fight, but I would say that the Avatar spirit in Metal Fight is a little more similar to Bit Beast than the avatars in Burst. So Burst is probably the most inconsistent as far as sort of the established lore of what the avatars actually are. In the first season of Burst, there's really no interaction between the avatars and the characters. Vault would occasionally, talk to his Beyblade or whatever, but it was never established that the avatars were anything other than sort of fancy eye candy that you would see during battle. And it was never really established in the early, seasons of Burst, specifically the first season, whether or not when those avatars were shown in the show, whether or not those were visible, whether the characters could see them, or whether it was just eye candy. The difference here being that in the original series in Plastic Gen, when they came out of the Bit Beast, characters could see them. They were acknowledged by the announcers during battles. Oh, they're summoning their Bit Beast. So it was this tangible thing, whereas in Burst, it just sort of kind of happened in the first season. You'd see them during an attack, but you weren't really sure if it was a tangible or real thing. And then when the second season of Burst came around, they sort of dipped more into that fantasy element, especially with the whole Red Eye thing with Shu. And later on, you have Aiga and stuff sort of interacting with his avatar, and other characters down the road interacting with their avatars. But it was sort of inconsistent as far as the lore and how that worked. Especially because in Burst, a lot of the characters were 3D printing the Beyblades. So the fact that the avatar is transitions between different models of the Beyblade that they're creating, it's just a little inconsistent lore-wise. It would have been nice if they would have explained it a little better. If I just 3D printed a Beyblade, how does the avatar... It's a topic for another video, I think, as far as Burst avatars go. But the thing with X is the manga hasn't really established avatars in the same way as the previous series so far. We've seen sort of avatars. We don't know if that's the term that they're going to use, but we'll call them avatars for now. We've seen avatars in the manga a little bit. In one of the early X battles, Cross is fighting, and you see him sort of embody a part of the theming of his Beyblade. You can see him with a sword fighting a knight with a shield. I don't know if we could classify that as an avatar, because it's not the Beyblade avatar. It's Cross with a sword fighting other Beyblade's avatar or whatever. And I felt like that was more of an analogy of what was happening during the battle rather than an actual avatar of the Beyblade. In the later episodes between Maid and Mako, we see the big shark show up. Whether that's physically happening, we don't really know. So it's sort of up in the air whether or not avatars are going to return in the same sense. We might still see sort of like the theming of the creature sort of show up during battles, but it's a question whether or not they're actually going to be tied to the show in any way, or if it's just going to be visual eye candy. All of the other previous series at one point or another have established the avatar as something that is in some way tied to the Beyblade. So whether or not they're physically appearing or not, we don't really know. In the opening credits of the first episode of Beyblade X, we see Drawn Sword as a full-size dragon in those opening credits. That could just be sort of visually spicing up the opening. Whether or not we actually see Drawn Sword in the anime, we don't know. So far, we haven't really seen any of the characters talking to their Beyblade like it's sentient, or like there's sort of any interaction between the Beyblade physically and the blader. So that's... I don't know, maybe that'll get explained at some point, but so far, there doesn't really seem to be any interaction between the two yet. Additionally, it sort of complicates things a little further because the Beyblades aren't as hard to obtain. There's not, the whole idea of a partner Beyblade's not as much of a thing as it used to be in previous series. And the reason why I say that is because Multi, when we see her in the preview for the second episode, she's got her case open and she has like just about every Beyblade released aside from Drawn Sword and Night Lance, which she hasn't received yet. But she's got like multiple copies of Shark Edge, she's got multiple copies of Shield, multiple copies of Wizard Arrow. So clearly Beyblades are able to be obtained a little bit easier, and the fact that Shark Edge is Maiden's like signature Beyblade, but Multi has like 3 of them, kind of removes the whole partner Beyblade aspect of it. Now, Bird in the first episode mentions that Drawn Sword is really rare, so it's possible that some are more uncommon than others, but I don't know that it's so rare that only one exists. I don't know that it's at that point. Also, during the manga, it's shown that prior to Cross leaving Team Pendragon, he wasn't even using Drawn Sword. He had given it to Chrome for him to use. So the intrinsic sort of tying of Beyblade, one specific Beyblade to a character, doesn't seem to be retained in this series. So I'm very curious how that's gonna work out. So, because Multi's got like three Beyblades that she's used in the manga now. She's got Night Shield, she's got Wizard Arrow, she's got Night Lance. So, a lot of people are saying that Night Lance is a direct evolution to Night Shield. I think it's just a variant of Night. I think we're gonna see multiple Knights. I think we're gonna see multiple Wizards. So, like, there's Night Lance, Night Shield. We could get a, Night whatever, Night Sword. I think we could get multiple motifs with the same sort of thing. So we might get a drawn variant. I think it's already confirmed that we're getting Drawn Dagger. I don't know that that's going to be a direct evolution of Drawn Sword. It might just be an alternate variant that Cross uses or another character uses. But I don't know. There's a lot of questions. So what do you guys think? Personally, I don't care if avatars come back if they're explained. At Burst, I feel like waited too long to establish the lore behind those, because the first season, it was really just kind of where we're at now with X, where it's like more realistic, and then they just threw the fantasy in, second season onwards. So I would rather them establish it early and establish it well, so the lore behind the series makes sense. But anyway, I want to know your guys' thoughts. Do you want avatars to stay? Are you tired of avatars? Well, what do you want to see in terms of the anime or the manga? I just wanted to give my thoughts. So, thank you for watching, guys. I appreciate it. Hit the like button if you enjoyed the video. Feel free to drop a comment for the algorithm, and I'll see you guys in the next one.
And just really quick, I want to give a big shout out to all of our patrons: PJC92, Joseph, Zenki, Teddy, Lucario, Jotomo, and Blueberry. Thank you for supporting the channel, and thank you everyone for watching. I'll see you in the next one.